No, this is not going to be a physical deadly wound. Right? The symbolism in this chapter is just that it's symbolism. We're not speaking of a literal deadly wound here. If we were speaking literally here, the Antichrist would be some sort of animal or beast, not a person, not an organization. Now, this deadly wound has to do with a prophecy in the Bible, a time prophecy, known as the 1260 days or years. So let's go through that, and let's go through each of the times when the Bible mentions this prophecy so we can understand it. Now, this chart is from Amazing Facts, great ministry, especially for new believers. And right here, they list all the scriptures where the Bible discusses the 1260-day year prophecy. And the Bible also mentions it as 42 months and time, times, and half a time. It's all the same prophecy, all the same exact amount of time. Now, you can look up here in this top corner, Numbers 14:34 and Ezekiel chapter 4, verses 5 and 6, give us the principle that a day in Bible prophecy is equal to a year of literal time. And here you can see in the chart, it begins in 538 AD, it ended in the year 1798 AD, which that is when the deadly wound happened. Now, the first time the Bible mentions this prophecy is in Daniel 7:25, so let's go there. And that actually gives us the starting point for this 538 AD time. Now, Daniel chapter 7, 24, and 25 give us several of the key characteristics of how to identify the Antichrist for these end times. Now, since you're already commenting on my video of who the Antichrist is, we'll just say who it is here. It's the papacy. And the Bible lets us know how long the Dark Ages would last as well. The saints would be given into his hand for a time, times, and the dividing of time. 3.5 prophetic years, 1260 prophetic days, 1260 literal years. And in verse 24, it gives us the starting point. See, one of the identifying characteristics of who the Antichrist is here in Daniel 7 is that it would arise among the Western nations of Europe. And the Bible lets us know these 10 horns are 10 kings. So it would subdue 3 of these kings. Who are those 3 kings? The Heruli, the Vandals, and the Ostrogoths. The last of them was uprooted in the year 538 AD. Hence why the Bible says the 1260 years started in the year 538 AD. We'll get to the deadly wound here in a minute, but for now let's get to the next mention in Daniel 12, verse 7. Here it mentions it by the same term that Daniel 7 does, a time, times, and half a time. And each verse where the Bible mentions it has a different perspective on this prophecy. It's fascinating. In Daniel 7, it was for the beginning of that time prophecy. In Daniel 12, it lets us know what's going on during that time prophecy. The papacy will be persecuting God's people and have dominion over them for 1260 years. Then the next time the Bible mentions this prophecy is actually twice in the beginning of Revelation 11. By the way, did you know the French Revolution was actually prophesied in Revelation chapter 11? That's a topic for another video. Verses 2 and 3, the Bible mentions the same prophecy by 2 different names. Speaking of the papacy, it says they would trample the holy city underfoot for 42 months. Jewish reckoning, prophetically speaking, 42 months equals to the same amount of time as 1260 days, or literal years. And here in verse 3, it says that. It says, I will give power unto my 2 witnesses, and they shall prophesy 1,260 days. Notice this, though, clothed in sackcloth. Why clothed in sackcloth? Because again, the 1260 days is the Dark Ages. The papacy, the Catholic Church, basically banned Bible study at one point. They had the people manipulated into believing that they're too stupid to interpret the Bible, that they had to rely on the priests. And by the way, the Catholic Church is still that way in parts of the world. I've had followers come and tell me that. They went to the Catholic Church, they know someone, they're married to someone. Their priests have told them that you cannot interpret the Bible on your own, you need us. But the Bible disagrees. You don't need a priest, you need Jesus. And Revelation 11 actually goes on to show us that shortly before the deadly wound happened is when the French Revolution would happen. And that leads us up to the deadly wound. And shortly before we get to the deadly wound, Revelation 12 also mentions the 1260-day years twice as well. This time from the perspective of God's church fleeing into the wilderness, and he protects them there for that same amount of time. It was mentioned there in verse 6, it's mentioned here again in verse 14, with the same perspective that God would protect his people in the wilderness for 1260 years. And you can study the Dark Ages, the experiences of different people throughout that time period. There were many times the papacy went after various groups of people like the Waldenses and other people that they hated. And oftentimes God would send a fog or he would do something to protect his people. And then the Bible gives us the last mention of this prophecy in Revelation 13, verse 5. And it mentions it by that name of 42 months. context of that is when the Bible says the deadly wound would happen. Now, we've already established the fact that this prophecy began in 538 AD. And the Bible mentions the deadly wound in direct context of this prophecy as well. So we take 538 AD, we add 1260 years to that, we get to 1798 AD. What happened then? Well, just as we were just talking about, the French Revolution happened shortly before this. The French general was sent into the Vatican, took the Pope captive, where he died in exile. That was the deadly wound which happened to the Roman Catholic papacy in that year, February 1798. But as you can plainly see, it says his wound would be healed. And this deadly wound being healed has been in the process of healing for around the past 100 years or so. You see, when the wound happened, everybody thought the Catholic Church was done for. They thought, well, they'll never recover from this. And for a couple of 100 years now, they have not enjoyed the same amount of power they did before 1798. But if you notice, if you pay attention over the past several decades, you'll notice that the papacy has been making inroads again throughout the various organizations and governments of the world. One of the ways they do that is through the Jesuit branch of the Catholic Church. I mean, this is an extremely wicked and despotic organization. It's just absolute no. Even Abraham Lincoln recognized how much mayhem they have caused over the years over the world. But it's really been healing much, much faster ever since Pope Francis took office. Now, what's interesting about him is he is the first Jesuit Pope. Now, here is their oath. Go ahead and pause it and read it. But you look at what Pope Francis has been doing over the years. He's been doing absolutely everything possible to bring the world back under the papal umbrella. He's apologized for past wrongs, which don't think that that's sincere, because what he's doing is doing whatever he has to do to get their dominion back. You see, it is part of Jesuit policy to lie and cheat and do whatever they have to do to get their end goal. And you can research the Jesuit organization. They were founded for the specific purpose of bringing everybody back under papal rule. You see, the papacy is like a chameleon crossed with a deadly serpent. They put on whatever appearance they have to, and once they have you, they inject their venom. Make no mistake, the papacy is the Antichrist, and most of the world, unfortunately, will only figure this out when it is too late. But you don't have to be one of those. You guys watching, you don't have to be in that group of people. You can seek Jesus now. You can have that relationship with him now, so that when all of this does go down, and it will be sooner than any of us expect, when all of this does happen, because you seek Jesus now, you will be safe. No, it won't be fun, but he will keep you safe throughout this ordeal. And I believe many will be unalived due to their faith throughout this coming crisis. But again, if you have Jesus, you will see him at his return. Seek Jesus now, friends. We don't have much time.